we're live tonight with my brother, actually, Tobias Collison. He's an F&B expert. He spent 18 years in the industry. I'll let you introduce yourself in a minute, Toby, but let's wait for some people to come on first. Who's out there? I'll give it a share myself. Hello. If you're out there, give us a comment. Let us know where you're coming on from. And obviously, the first thing I'm going to say is give us some likes and shares. The more people we can get on board, the better. Toby's here to answer questions tonight. Anybody that's been furloughed, if you're in hospitality, if you're an independent, if you've got any questions around how to drive efficiencies in your business, if you're worried about whether there's what the options are to you after your furlough, all those sort of things, we're here today to help answer some of those. We've got 7 people on now, so if everybody can give us a like and share, that'd be great. If we can get over 10 people, I'll let Toby do his intro, and you can learn a bit about why he's here today to talk us through what's going on. So there's 8 people now. Hello, everybody. If you can just say Pip and Liv from Clifton, hello, how you doing? And Dave, nice to have you on board, Dave. Anybody else out there that wants to let us know where you're coming on from? We'll get the conversation started. We've got 7 people now. That's likes and shares. If we can get likes, shares, if we can get over 10, we'll get started. The more people we have on the show, the better the show. The more questions we get, the more conversation we have, the more you learn, the more we can share. It's just how it works. So if we're anybody that's on now, if you can just give us a quick like, share, hit some love hearts, tell us where you're on from, and we'll get stuck in. Toby, if you want to give a bit of an intro to yourself now, let everybody know your experience.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Christian introduced me as an expert. I wouldn't really go as far as that, but I have been in hospitality for over 18 years now, predominantly operations, but lucky enough to sort of move my experience into software and sort of customer success teams more recently. So reasonable knowledge and experience across the industry. So hopefully we can delve into the current crisis and how amazing this brilliant industry can come out of it, and is currently working through this process to come out the other side as well. So
yeah, well, let's just get the dark stuff out of the way to start with. Everybody that's on now, we've got 14 people. Give us a like and a share. Let us know where you're coming on from. It'd be lovely to see the comments coming in. But just to get stuck in with Toby, if we just get the dark stuff out of the way, the doom and gloom. I mean, what's the current view of the F&B industry at the moment? What are we looking at?
Well, it's pretty dire across, well, not just the hospitality industry, but across many industries, as we all know. But hospitality does tend to get hit the first and the hardest, just purely because it's the easiest thing to switch off with your finances. Obviously, the lockdown happened really quickly as well, so a lot of businesses were expecting it, but weren't expecting it as quickly as it was announced. So there's all that lockdown and closing that's been going on. And yeah, it's just, you could say business as usual for the hospitality industry. They've gone through the 2008 crash. They've gone through Brexit. They've gone through the rates rises a few years ago. But it's such an incredible, amazing industry. They always find ways to come back stronger and more resilient than before. And I'm sure this will be the case with this COVID crisis at the moment. Just looking across the numbers, we've got 90% plus furloughed staff within the industry. The latest CJ figures out today were suggesting 36% of business leaders aren't expecting all their sites to reopen at the end of this. So we're potentially looking at a contraction of around 20, even 30% of sites not reopening. So it's sad, and it's terrible, potential terrible news. But they will find ways to come out stronger and fighting through this. There's some brilliant ideas going on at the moment, and new sort of bits and bobs going on, sort of coat delivery, and delivery obviously is growing exponentially, but the industry is getting on that. These so-called dark kitchens, which I hate the word for, but shadow kitchens, if you will become more predominant and more, they're getting more and more popular now. So you can offer your branded or even excellent fine dining experience in the comfort of people's own homes. So there are plenty of things going on out and about at the moment.
Yeah, I mean that's the industry, isn't it? Because that's one thing that we can jump onto straight away, I think, and that's just how people have already evolved. We've obviously seen a huge surge in deliveries, but what does that mean? It's interesting you mentioned those kitchens there. Where do you think that's going to take us?
It's interesting, really, because fundamentally, I think it's geared more towards the entrepreneurial spirit, from what I see. You know, the people that don't necessarily have the funds to open a high street with the rates and rents the way they are now. You know, they can potentially do a small pop-up with a larger kitchen off site, which is a lot cheaper, a lot easier to run and manage, and do delivery out of that kitchen. They're a really interesting concept. It's still early days, but you know, even the bigger companies are now getting involved with these sort of so-called dark kitchens, and it's just a great way to offer your, you know, fantastic menu at a much reduced price to the company itself, and still offering the same great experience to the individual. So especially away from the high street, where, you know, moped access, car access may be restricted. If you've got a dark kitchen out in a business estate or somewhere much more convenient, you know, it's a lot easier to deliver from.
And just to clarify what you mean by dark kitchen, this is where you literally set up a kitchen solely for providing the menu of a restaurant through Deliveroo, Uber Eats, Just Eat, whatever it may be.
Yeah. Yes, there's no customers as such within the business or within the unit itself. So, you know, that's another sort of reduced cost, where that you don't have to have, you know, waiters or waitresses or, you know, management looking after guests day to day. It's a pure kitchen that's set up to deliver fantastic food at, you know, great delivery and experience.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you're not gonna, you haven't got to worry about those overheads you've just mentioned. Plus, you haven't got to worry about the logistics of getting the food to your end client. And it's interesting you say that, because obviously that means, I mean, who just to come back onto the furlough scenario, what do you think this is going to mean for those that are currently furloughed now? 90%, 9 out of 10 people currently furloughed. How many of them are going to have jobs at the end of this? And also, who's going to be the most hit? Are we talking about the independents being most hit? Are we talking about the big brands?
I think it's across the board. It's very difficult to answer. You've got the high streets obviously been under pressure for many years. So some of the bigger companies may be looking at this as a real evaluation time of how they move forward and tackle their growth plans. You may have the independents, which have been hit by the rate rises already, and they may just say, "And that's enough." I think the important thing is it's going to be who's most resilient and who's got the ideas and the efficiencies to come out of this the other side, not necessarily the individual versus the big company. I think it's going to be down to the people working for those leisure outlets, and the ones that are more resilient, have the ideas and have the cash flow to keep coming in during this crisis, to come out the other side and get their engines or kitchens firing up, as you would say, again as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I mean, we've got 20 people on now. If everybody can give us a quick like and share, we'd probably get over 40, and that'd be awesome. We're here with Tobias Collison, who's sharing his experience of the F&B industry and what this means during this current pandemic. We've covered what the current industry looks like. We're looking at 90% staff furloughed. We're looking at 30% of venues closing down. I mean, turning to the positives again, though, I mean, that alone surely is going to be interesting. If those big brands that we've seen struggle last year are going to, this might be the pivot moment for them, and there will be a rise in free venues, these places that will have high footfall. I mean, I know you're based in Birmingham, and the Bull Ring, for instance, that if these sort of places become available, there may be some new deals, there may be opportunities for independents to get in there, get some funding, get some backing in order to fill these spaces and utilize these amazing footfall-filled venues that have historically or at least recently been controlled by the big brands.
Yeah, potentially. I think obviously rents have gone sky high in the last 10 years, with the branded boom after the crash, if you would, from 2008 to sort of 2012, that swan song of the massive growth with the branded restaurants, and the rates and rents just went up from that. So I think that the high streets are going to be a very different beast after this. You know, it was happening anyway, but I think this COVID has definitely sped it up. We're looking at much more mixed use moving forward. You know, landlords ultimately still have the rents they have to charge. You know, they'll have loans, etc., taken out on that outlet. Some are better than others, obviously, but if they can't find a retail unit to rent that space, they'll find something else for it, whether that's converting it to office or even, you know, residential. We may see more and more residential appearing in and on and around the high street moving forward. We're talking about, you know, the big sort of bull rings and whatnot. Bull rings notoriously very expensive to rent, and it does price out a lot of the high street chains from there because of that reason. So whether they look and review that, or whether they look for other mixed uses for the bull ring, because it's perfectly placed within the city centre next to the best train stations in the country, that's for them to answer. But I think there will be a massive change within the high street, which is just going to speed up now, and it's going to be a much more mixed use, whether it's retail, hospitality and leisure, or pubs and bars, and residential as well.
Right. Everybody that's on now, if you've got any questions for Toby, by the way, as we're getting through, please drop them on. I just want to say hello from Dean from the Hills. Thanks, Rachel. Hi, Beth. Yeah, so if anybody's got any questions, feel free. Please don't be nervous at all. Jump in, ask away. He's not going to bite.
I'm nervous, so yeah.
And if you're enjoying the show so far, give us some likes and shares, and let us know in the love hearts. Because actually, you were around in 2008. Obviously, you were running was it in King Street in Manchester?
Yeah, I was running a bar.
You were running a bar.
It was like 12 years ago now. Yeah, so I remember that crazy week where everything sort of stopped and crashed, and all my regulars came in and just said there and then, we've had, you know, half of us lost their jobs and the other half are on 20-30% pay reductions, and that happened in one day. It was like, wow, this is scary. We were in a good position. We had a great team working in that business, and we rode it out. But you know, a lot of the businesses around that area in Manchester were hit really hard, as they were across the country. A lot of boarded up pubs, bars, shops, restaurants. It just hit overnight. It was crazy. I remember that really well.
Well, how long did that take to recover? I mean, it's not really comparable now, because that was people losing their incomes now it's not just that, it's also the fact that these venues might not be there come lockdown. But just so we can get some sort of grounding, how long did it take before things started to stabilize after 2008, and when did you start to see that growth coming back?
It was difficult, really. I mean, I sort of moved more into area management, so I sort of saw wider figures across the country. And I remember, obviously, London bounces back reasonably quickly. We, you know, up I would say up until 2012, and the Olympics happened, we were looking at sort of, you know, back to not normality, but just that, you know, we were looking at positive again within the industry. It was a good couple of years where it was really tough. You know, a lot of the big companies were scrambling for cash, really, just to keep afloat and keep going. I think this current crisis is slightly different in that it's affecting people's money in their pocket, which it obviously did in the financial crash. I mean, I remember walking to work, and you know, people were queuing outside banks to get their money out before it went bust. So hopefully we're not that much scary with the finances, but I think customer confidence is going to be the key for this one. You know, it wasn't financial, as it's not just financial now. It's, you know, potentially people are thinking, if they go out, are they going to get ill or sick, or, you know, is it going to lead to another potentially worse lockdown or second spike? And that's what's going on in people's heads at the moment, as well as the financial restraints that potentially may come out of this, with, you know, people on furlough, a reduced wage of what they may be working, people losing, and, you know, horribly losing their jobs after this. Not just hospitality, but, you know, the airlines have been massively hit. So we'll see what happens, but I think the recovery may be slightly quicker because it hasn't damaged yet the core institutions and the core financial institutions, which do unfortunately tend to make the world go round. But I think that the hit will be shorter but sharper, I think.
I mean, yeah, I'll jump onto a question just quickly because Rachel's asked, local F&B independents in Worcester have been doing a great job of pivoting, and there seems to be a lot of local love and support at the moment. Do you think this will continue after lockdown?
Absolutely. I think this is really showing, just, with Thursday night clapping for the NHS to just seeing my neighbours out and about a lot more, just discussing, because I'm at home a lot more. So, I think the community spirit's definitely been raised up during this, and that's clear to see on people's reactions on social media and even the news in the evening and whatnot. I think people are going to be a lot more, what's the best word? Probably a lot more thankful for their local community and thankful for the independence that they have. We all have amazing independents around us, that will hopefully be there when all this reopens. And I think definitely people will start to really look out for that and look after their communities a lot more, and the businesses within those communities.
Yeah, I agree totally. I think we've already seen that, and I think it's going to need to continue to a certain degree, because I can't see how they're going to lift lockdown entirely anytime soon. And so to come back to what you were saying before, and that customer trust, that piece around customer confidence, how are you going to get that customer confidence when you're having to implement social distancing rules? I mean, it's not going to be the same going to a restaurant and sitting down and how are you going to serve, how are you going to get served? What's the ambience going to be like? We've seen that they've said that there may be an opportunity for cafes with outside space or pubs with beer gardens to be able to get back into action at some point. There's been rumours among the media today about that. But how's it going to work? How are you going to be able to get that customer confidence back when people are having to come in and your waiters are there with their face mask on? I mean, it kind of kills the mood, right?
Potentially. Everyone's guessing at the moment of what the government are going to announce this weekend on coming out of this lockdown. They may not even touch pubs and bars. We don't know. We can hope they will, but I think we've got a bit of a divide in the country at the moment. Those that are wishing the lockdown to be ended, and those that I can understand exactly where they're coming from. They're nervous and their confidence is low at the moment and coming back out and about in the open world with what's going on. It's a terrible thing that's happened, and it's looking at the numbers not just in this country but across the world. It's crazy scary. But I think once the government announce, this industry is fantastic, it will find the best way to do it, and they're brilliant at keeping their teams and guests safe. With regards to ambience and whatnot, I think people who will be out and about will just be happy to be out and about, and they'll make their own ambience. It's not really a laughing matter at the moment, but we'll come out of this, with, like I said, more community spirit, a greater understanding of people's individual circumstances and how customers and businesses work together. I think it's going to be a lot more close knit moving forward. With regards to reopening, the government have set to announce it, but it could be a restriction on capacity. So yeah, you won't have the ambience or the rocking Friday nights at 10 o'clock with the music blaring and people stood shoulder to shoulder. That's not going to be the normal for a long time, I don't think. But I think people will just be happy to get out and about and see friends, family again. And that will be the ambience and the culture that we need moving forward for the short term.
Yeah, I agree. Holly Randall, thank you for your question. Really worrying and scary time for our much loved industry. Do you think we will just need to adapt to a new norm or eventually bounce back to what we knew as normality? Maybe all table service like in Europe will be our new norm.
Hi, Holly. That's a really good question. I think.
Good question, Holly. What's the table service? What's the norm in Europe? What does that mean? And before we answer, everybody that's on now, I'm loving the numbers. If we can get a like and share, we can just push it over the 25 mark. Everybody that's enjoying the show, if you're enjoying, thinking you're getting some insight, if you've got any questions, just hit the love buttons, give us some hearts and give us some shares. We get more people on, more questions coming in. The more questions we have, the better the show. So, you know, spread the love, people, and spread this message of IsoNation. So yeah, Holly's question anyway, sorry, the new norm.
The new norm. It's a good question, and I don't think anyone knows what the new norm will be. Potentially, table service will obviously come into it because you can limit people entering an enclosed business at the bar, you know, in the corner. The Continentals do it very well, table service. You go on holiday and 90% of the time you'll be offered table service, or it's just a given. I don't think we're geared up in this country to do that with charges, costs that the businesses have to do. I think what we will see is a lot more speeding up of automation, whether that's through mechanical automation or hardware or software, through algorithms and understanding peaks and troughs of your businesses. I think that will definitely be sped up now, and people really more open to that. It's being, you know, it's seen elsewhere in other industries, but hospitality, it's still not quite there yet. I think reduced capacity, definitely. Late night venues may be the last to reopen, especially with, you know, nightclubs and whatnot. But at the moment, we just don't know what the new norm would be. I mean, hopefully we can eradicate this horrible disease, or whether we have to wait for a vaccine, which is potentially 12, 18 months away to be fully rolled out. We're just going to have to wait and see what the new norm is. But I definitely think automation is definitely, for this country, is coming with enhanced sort of software and hardware tools to help utilize your business. And I think delivery as well is going to be huge. Obviously, it was growing massively before this with Deliveroo, Just Eat, etc. You know, getting in on the restaurant and pubs and bars. And I think coming out of this, it's just going to be even bigger. I think it was about 8-9% before this before this crisis, and it's definitely going to be double digit coming out of this. There's some brilliant companies out there at the moment doing some really interesting stuff on delivery at home and whatnot, and sort of retail as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, Christian, Holly, I don't know the answer, unfortunately.
Yeah, Holly says, agree, don't believe we will have walk-ins for a long time. And the European norm is all drinks served at table, nobody going up to bars. So thank you for that, Holly. Appreciate that. Yes, order at table and delivery, I believe, will be massive. Yeah, so I mean, I think that's the thing, isn't it? We're gonna. They're talking about petrol stations potentially seeing the return of I don't even know what they were called because I've never experienced it, but a petrol
host.
Yeah,
attendant.
Attendant. That's it, a petrol attendant, and those sort of things. So, you know, there may be an opportunity to fill some of the void in employment figures, and at the same time prevent people from allowing them to adhere to a social distancing rules. So
yeah, I think it's interesting after the 2008 crash, when people started to, you know, the big branded restaurants were opening on the high street and within, you know, high density areas. One of the most important and prolific roles that came out of that was, you know, hosts at the door to greet and seat you, and these huge table management systems that were managed by these, you know, brilliant roles. And as sort of the high streets got slightly more smaller again, with the big venues sort of not disappearing but readjusting their sizes potentially, and also costs, you know, that's unfortunately one of the first roles to be looked at. As you know, it's brilliant for customer engagement and looking after your restaurant and driving service, but ultimately it's a cost which some people think is reasonably easy to cut off the top line. So I think moving forward, interestingly, we could see the return of more and more hosting at front doors. Like Holly mentioned, you know, there's a famous pub chain in the UK that announced that they're reopening in June. They're already way ahead of the curve with their app, which is, and I don't know if you've ever used it. It's fantastic, and you know, you see all the Twitter and social media things of people saying their table number at this pub chain and whatnot, and getting thousands of pounds worth of drinks sent to them. So they're already in a really good position. I think definitely moving forward, there'll definitely be much more table service done via the customer's app.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, actually. We all know what that brand is as well. Whether he has any staff working for him after what he said, we'll have to see, but there's certainly infrastructure in place. With that in mind, how will people recover? I mean, where do you see the F&B industry 18 months time and 36 months time? Do you think we'll be back to normal by then? Or do you think some of these introductions might have long-term significance, because people surely will enjoy that sort of better attendance, that table service, the more tailored approach, if you like?
I don't think we will ever return to normal for a long time of what will be normal. I think fundamentally we will see social distancing for at least 12 months by the looks of it, if not more. We're going to have to come up with some genius ways in the industry of how we keep our customers and staff and team safe. And it's just going to be hard to see how we do that, whether it's reduced capacity, but does that mean the industry or the outlet itself isn't viable any much longer? Do the government continue supporting financially because half the team still won't be able to work at reduced capacity? Do we just reopen open air spaces to begin with? And with the British weather, that's not really viable either. It's been a beautiful day today, but tomorrow probably rain. I don't know, but I think technology is definitely going to be a huge part moving forward. The technology already exists. It's just potentially the cost and the rollout of it that's prohibitive. But if it means you can reopen and get money back through the tills and keep your team and guests safe, it's definitely going to be at the forefront. And whether there's any government grants being looked at for technology, I don't know, but it's definitely going to be not the saving grace, but potentially something that's going to help the industry come out of this fighting.
It's interesting because you've got to force hands sometimes, and this is certainly forcing hands. It's making everybody turn to digital. We've already covered some of the innovations we've seen in the F&B industry, talking about the dark kitchens. I never knew they were called that. That's awesome.
I don't like that name. It's just it's a strange name to call them, but that's what they're called out in the media. I think shadow kitchens is better, but we'll see what comes out of it. But
just saying a quick shout out to Nick Baxter, Dave Green, Gemma, Rachel. Thanks guys for coming on. If everybody's on now, just give us a quick love heart and a quick share. Try and get as many people on as possible. We are slowly going up, so you must be enjoying it. There's more and more people coming on. And if you're here and you work in the F&B industry, please feel free to quiz Tobias, who's right here with us, and make it as hard as possible so that we can see him square. Please get involved. If you have any comments at all, get involved. But just to you tap into some of your skill set, your what you were always being utilized for. I know you're not going to blow your own trumpet much, but turning businesses around has been something you've been involved in. What can people be looking at now as they come out of this? Where can they be driving efficiencies in their cafe, in their restaurant, in their, you've even ran some hotels. So how can they be looking at, increasing their profit by not necessarily cutting staff or things like that? How can they make other efficiencies?
I think it's an interesting one because a lot of the industry was already at the back wall with rates, rents, etc., etc. Brexit had obviously caused huge uncertainty for a couple of years. Passenger numbers coming into the country for tourism were down. So there's already a lot of anxiety out there within the industry of how they survive this. I think certain parts of the industry are already at bare minimum with staffing. So how do you go beyond that? It's down to measuring and really managing your business day to day through the peaks and troughs of your sales. The hard thing is what are the sales going to look like after this? It's going to be a blank canvas for 3 months potentially, because we would have come out of a close down in February and reopening if we're lucky in the start of summer, which are two very different trading patterns. And we can go on last year, but we're not going to be reopening on the figures that we had last year within the industry. So it's going to be a really hard one. There's people paid a lot more in a lot higher positions than me that will be working through this now hard, looking at different models, different ways of how they can do this. As I said earlier, I think, automation is going to be up there, whether it's through more table bookings, ensuring people actually turning up, whether that's through deposits, through to getting the customer through the door, and then measuring whether it's via a host and turning those tables and getting as much spend per head as possible through the business without detrimental to the guest's experience. Because ultimately, people are going to come out of this so excited, and we need, as an industry, to keep looking after people as we have done before brilliantly, and not be detrimental to service. So it's a very hard coin to land, and it's going to be a very interesting 12 months, potentially 18 months, to see how people react and what they do to come out of this. I don't think there's any particularly right answer at the moment. Every sort of every outlet or company is going to treat it differently, because you'll have the premium end, which may be more suited to coming out of this with social distancing, because they tend to have the more larger sort of spaces within the tables, to the high turnover, high cover outlets, which tend to pack more people in. They may have a different business model to come out of this. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I think we'll have to see what happens. Technology is definitely there, but I don't think it's going to be. Obviously, it takes time to roll out, embed, and cost. So it may not be the quick answer, but I think it will be the long-term answer for many as well.
Well, I think it's always the long-term answer, isn't it? So it's nice to have this sort of catalyst that, as long as it's there, if you've got the cash flow to be able to cover it right now, that's the difficult part, isn't it? If anybody wants to know more about IsoNation, by the way, that's watching now, just comment IsoNation in the comments, obviously, and then you will get a message in your Facebook Messenger, and it will give you a bit of history, bit about how you might want to get involved, a bit about how what it's all about, basically. Just to come back on what you were saying there, though, Toby, and again, guys, if you're enjoying this, please hit the love hearts, let us know, share the message, get more people involved, because we're covering some important stuff tonight. But when we're talking about that picture in 18 months and beyond, what support do you think people need? We've got furlough at the moment for the short-term impact, and keeping people employed so we can see what's happening, get settled, see what's happening. It's kind of a limbo that we're in. But what support do they need? Are we talking about, is cutting business rates going to be a massive one for them? Is that going to take a lot of weight off people's shoulders over the next 12 to 18 months and potentially beyond that? What is it they're looking for?
Well, I mean, predominantly the biggest cost for any business, and especially hospitality, is team. Following up from that, it's rents. So whether landlords have been, some will say unfairly treated, some will say fairly treated over the last 2 to 3 years with rent reviews, CVAs, etc. I think there's still a lot of battlegrounds to be fought on rents, and I think that's going to be going on right now. Obviously, the team's the biggest cost. That's been resolved partly and temporarily by the government furlough scheme. Companies will now be looking at the rents they pay. Rateable is government backed basically, so it's hard to argue that. There is a lot of work going on within the industry itself on challenging those rate changes, and I think the government are looking at those, of how they've impacted massively negative some outlets. Of course, the other side, it's helped some outlets as well with rate reductions. I think support-wise, the government so far has been looking at feedback and speaking to colleagues. Has been very good. Furlough's gone pretty smoothly. People are getting paid. The business loans the government are offering, which I think are interest-free for 12 months. And no
this week as well that interest-free for 12 months, and they call bounce-back loans interest-free for 12 months, and then 2.5% for the remaining 5 years, which is there's no personal guarantees, there's no early repayments as well. So hopefully these bounce back loans are going to help a lot of people out. Yeah,
definitely. So I mean, you get to sort of 12 months on, and I'm not sure what other help or resource can be provided. Obviously the government will have a huge bill at the end of this, so they'll need to work out on how they repay, but we'll have to wait and see. There may be further support down the line if numbers are still low and people are really struggling to get up and running. We'll have to wait and see. There may be a more some more ideas on how we utilize these, buildings and units out and about in the spaces, and whether, we look at sharing, with potential daytime businesses, or whether, there could be any options. But fundamentally, I think we just need to get the next 6 to 12 months out of the way first, and then see where the land lies when the dust settles, because it's going to be interesting.
I've got some other questions to come on, but just to say, Livy Green has just shared a change petition into the comments for the Chancellor to urgently support the hospitality industry. So if anybody's feeling passionate about that, let's go and sign up petition, get involved. Again, if anybody's got any questions, you want to get involved at all with the IsoNation, just comment IsoNation below. But if you've got any comments for Toby, please drop them in the comments, and we'll try and get them answered as quickly as possible. Just to cover something off in my head, I mean, it's a small thing. Obviously, insurance is probably pretty invalid right now for a lot of people. But what happens to stock? What does it mean for people that haven't been able to turn that stock over quickly?
There's a lot of stock in the bin, unfortunately. I think the government did some more support with being able to write off, beer and ale and whatnot. I think they did something along those lines. But fundamentally, everything, when that government announced the lockdown and the closure of pubs and bars, everything that was in that business and on its way to the business would have been thrown away. I know a lot of the companies and businesses try to give it away, or do a last cook up for NHS workers and whatnot. But fundamentally, there's a lot of stock that's been out in the supply chain and in those businesses that have gone to waste. It's an interesting point on how much notice the industry will need to reopen, varying degrees from 1 week to 3 weeks. But the supply chain needs rebooting. We're struggling to get certain. I think I read the other day, tea bags maybe in short supply coming up because of the lockdown in sort of where they're produced or grown. Sorry. It could be a interesting supply chain for the next sort of 6 months of while we start to reboot and get things moving again. But yeah, stock ultimately there's a lot gone to waste, and I don't think we'll know the full costings of that until after this crisis and people start to recount and go through their losses.
Of course, yeah. Just to cover some of the points that we've talked about tonight, because there are some big numbers in there. 30% of venues not expecting to reopen. Is that right?
That's what we're seeing in the figures. Potentially a lot. The majority of business leaders and owners think 20 to 30% of their businesses potentially may not reopen.
90% of F&B staff or industry staff are currently furloughed right now. So it is pretty drastic figures for the F&B industry, but there's some positives as well. So we've talked about the rise of delivery. We've talked about, the dark kitchens. We've talked about the innovation in tech that's coming along and will come along. We talked about some of the possibilities for facing those social distancing rules, what it means for independents and big brands alike. So we're probably going to start to round up now, to be honest, unless we have any questions coming in. Let's hope nobody is going to order tea in our site, says Holly Randall. And really interesting insights. Thank you, Gemma. Shinny's on board as well. Dave Green commented, IsoNation. I hope you're learning about us now. Thanks, buddy. One thing that has been interesting, and you've touched on some of the news stories that have been going around, but one thing that I've seen is these pubs that are in central London that are crowdfunding to stay open right now. I think one of them's the oldest running pub in London or something, and they are currently crowdfunding and being kept open by their patrons. Do you think that's something that might come into play a bit more as well with your loyal day-to-day audience, your customers that are coming into the same pub day in, day out, or week in, weekend out? Do you think you can have some sort of crowdfunding things in place, or perhaps even some cooperatives taking over some venues?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely saw cooperatives rise after the 2008 crash with, pubs are part of the local community, and when they disappear, you lose, part of that charm and resilience to that community. There's some really amazing communities that bought up the pubs and converted them into not only a pub but a post office as well. So we could see more of that again since 2008 crash. I did some LinkedIn posts a couple of months ago now about supporting your local by buying gift vouchers, and I think that's something that could, potentially keep going. We're starting to see some of the local regular sites now that they've had a time to take stock and plan effectively to be safe as possible, that they're starting to do takeaways again, or click and collect. So I think they're starting to get more and more momentum, and the local community supporting their businesses and asking how they can support the longer this goes on. And I think once the lockdown's eased and outlets can start to be more relaxed about what they offer and what they do, I think definitely local communities will flock back, whether it's a takeaway or a delivery at home, if they're not confident going out still, or whether it's visiting the site and booking a table, which I think will be the norm moving forward, and potentially looking at different times. Our dining pattern may change. If you can't eat at 7:30, you might just leave it, but moving forward, if you can't eat at 7:30, you may just eat at 6. I don't know. We'll see what happens with the customer base and how they react to this, but I definitely see the community supporting the local a lot more.
Yeah, and that's definitely another thing you touched on there. People are going to be looking at the data coming out of this as well, aren't they? They're going to be trying to understand what that audience behavior is looking like. And this first 12 months of data coming out of this now is going to be really telling. It's going to be so dynamic. It's going to be month on month reactivity. Nifty Collison is on. You may recognize the surname. She's actually our sister, Natalie. Thanks for coming on. Mr. Dark Kitchens, what are they? I wanted to know that too. It's such a cool name. So Dark Kitchens, correct me if I'm wrong, Toby, but Dark Kitchens are essentially kitchens set up to service deliveries of, whether that be Deliveroo, Uber Eats, Just Eats, or whatever. And there has been a bit of movement from people having restaurants that have opened kitchens so that it can still provide their menus, their high quality food, without having to worry about the overheads of running a restaurant and staffing and what have you. And there's been quite a dramatic change towards that since the lockdown, because obviously restaurants currently are just kitchens, right? So that's what a dark kitchen is. If everybody's enjoyed tonight, please give us some loves. I'm so chuffed that we've kept the numbers consistent as well. So you've obviously been enjoying yourselves. I think that's it for my questions. If there's anything you want to add, Toby, I'm not sure. There's some really great stuff. Thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate that. It's been awesome. If anybody does have any questions, feel free to comment on them, this video, even when it's not live, and we will get back to you. And hopefully we're going to have Toby on again soon, once we know more about this exit strategy, and once we have a clear idea of when we get out of this limbo, what that looks like. We'll get Toby back on, and he can give us a bit of a better picture on what it can be and how we can strategize around it for F&B individuals. Does that sound cool?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been really good, and some really good questions as well. And I think what we all know is this industry is fantastic. I love it to bits, and I've been in it since I was 16. Really, I think I worked on my birthday, actually, 16th birthday, to get into it. So it will bounce back. It always does. It's always tends to be hit the hardest in the first and tends to come out of it the last, but it always survives, and it will come out of this stronger and better than ever.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for that lovely roundup, and thank you for taking part. Everybody, if we can give some love hearts just to say thank you for Toby. He's taking his time out of the evening to share these wonderful insights with you. So please give him some love, and we'll all see you soon. Thank you very much, everyone.
Have a good night, evening, everyone.
Bye.